Hey, Matt's Garage here with another installment in my metalworking series here on my 240SX. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so I haven't put the frame rail in the car yet, as you can see, but I'm starting on the next piece, fabricating up a new trunk drop. That's what this rusted piece of metal used to be, and that goes in this area of the car here. So it's kind of drops the from the trunk pan down and meets the quarter panel. On the outside at the bottom, if my quarter panel had a bottom, it would have spot welds connected to that along here. And it did have an air vent in here originally. I'm pretty sure all this is for is when you slam the doors on the car so that it relieves some air pressure in the car and the doors close easier that way and it doesn't jar stuff in the car. But being that the car's getting up there in age, I'm concerned that this old rubber is not as pliable as it once was, and it's probably not going to make a good seal. I'm concerned it could allow exhaust fumes to be sucked into the car, so I'm opting to eliminate it from the new panel that I'm making, which will also make it simpler to make. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build this out of 18 gauge sheet here, and going to get started on it now. So here we are, we got our piece of 18 gauge, it's got satin coat on it. We'll be sanding that off as we go because paint doesn't stick really well to that. Here's what I'm going to be using to cut it because it's 18 gauge. I don't need a cutoff wheel. I can use shears, tin snips, whatever you want to call them. So these here I'm very proud of. These were my grandfather's, and they were made a long time ago by a blacksmith. And I'm guessing they're over 100 years old. They're made to work on an anvil here. You can see this will fit into that square hole that all anvils have on them. All larger anvils anyways. And then I use these little snips to trim up edges and stuff, and they're pretty handy for that. They're surprisingly capable for the size of them. They have these with red handles and yellow handles too, and if you're ever wondering why, pretty sure that the green handled ones are right hand, the red handled ones are left hand, and the yellow handled ones are a straight cut. So that's why they have different colored handles. If you ever wondered, it's color coding for the style of blade that they have on them. Then I just have these pair of, Stanley tin snips. I think it's like the largest size you can buy, and then I extended the handles with some pipe here. And they actually work really well too on this 18 gauge. So I'm not going to build any kind of a template because I was able to get this all straightened out, fit it back in the car, and I got a pretty clear template from this. Okay, well you can see I've got the lines all drawn out here, and that's roughly what I want. I'm just going to try my Stanleys here. I do have an electric shear actually that works really good too, but I kind of like working with hand tools, so that's what I'm doing today. I was in the mood for hand tools. So I'm just going to get started bending those bends, and just going to bend this first one right on the lap bench this way. If you kind of just get both ends started on a long section like this, it'll hold it on the edge that way. And then you can work the middle across and then just keep going back and forth across. Now that I've got a nice bend in there, I can work it from the back side. See, it's fitting on there pretty good. I took the air vent off so it would fit a little tighter. And I put that bend in with my dolly. And so I just have to do that. I'm going to warm it up with the torch a little this time for this bend. Just a little, not a lot. If I heat it too much, I'll get distortion. So I'll just heat the whole thing a little bit so I don't distort it. Okay. Now I'll just attack it like this. Now that I've got quite a line there, I'll be able to just come along here. And I'm just going to do a test fit here. I don't expect it to be bang on perfect the first try. You can see it sort of butts up. That's the top line. You can see where that paint is. See, there's some metal there that's not bent to where it should be, but actually it's fitting pretty darn close. You can see it lines up nicely with the wheelhouse there, and it's just not quite tucking in here, but actually that's because of that right there. I did run into a little trouble with fitting this edge to the wheelhouse there. I thought I had it fitting good, and then I trimmed it back, and then of course when I went to set the panel up there again, I must have been holding it a little crooked the first time or something, and it ended up being a little shy, so I had to rework that lip, and I'm going to be fixing that up with the welder a bit, so you won't be able to tell on the finished product, but little bit annoying there. I'm sure I'll spend a little time making that look how I want it now, but that's how it goes. It does fit nicely in the car now, and just going to show you how straight it is with the level here, and then the same thing this way. So to fit the trunk drop in, I first have to get this tail panel here fixed up, and also it attaches to the wheelhouse there. So wheel well, whatever you want to call it. I have traced out a line on that, just going inside the seam there because it's still in good shape on the seam, except the last part there. I'll trim off and replace, and then going all the way back to there where it's in pretty good shape again, and then coming up above that where the floor pan meets the wheelhouse there. So and then I'm going to also trim off the skin right now where I'm going to be replacing it, even though I won't be replacing it back until the trunk drop is in there. But it overlaps right here, so it's all interconnected, and I have to change this corner out. You can see it's rusty too. So so right now that's the goal right now, is to cut this out and change it. You can see I've already split the seam here. We're going to do a factory seam again. And if you're wondering why I've sort of rounded out this corner here, well, I just find it adds some strength. Like if you make a sharp corner there, then you'll have more of a tendency to have a bit of a fold line on your seam or whatever. It's easier to blend it in this way, I find, so it's worth a little extra effort, so I make those curves where I can. I got that trimmed off, and there's the pieces there. See the rust on there. And you can see I went plenty high on there. I'm going to clean up the inside while I have this all apart so that any little bubbles like that are gone. Up here where I stopped, right there. Of course, I'm going to have to continue all the way around the wheel opening there is rust it, but for now I'll temporarily weld it to this piece, and then later when I continue with body repairs, I'll break that weld and continue a patch around there. And then up in here, turned out pretty good. I had to use my little hand chisel. Works really good actually, just for finishing up a cut, like in the corner, like right here even. I cut that last ½ an inch with this. Here's the view from up top there. So you can see there's a little bit of rust on a few things, but it's, you know, it's salvageable, and you know, I can't get rid of 100% of the rust on this car. That's kind of dreaming at this point. I'm gonna, you know, get rid of as much as I can and make it a solid car again, but it's not gonna be 100% rust free when I'm done. So here's what I mean by staggering the joint. You can see that I've pulled back the outer layer about an inch back on all the way around, and then you can see I have an overlapping area here. So I've still got some trimming to do here. It's not going to be quite an inch. It's going to be exactly as much as is showing there, but that's enough to stagger the joint nicely. You can see I got the back side of the outer quarter there really nice, where the spot welds go there, all that. What I used to clean that all up was that kind of a fiber disc, really coarse. Stripping wheel they call it. That one's pretty well wore out now, but moving on with these repairs here, and just making the patches, and like I said, 18 gauge on this wheelhouse here. I've got quite a bit of excess metal there because as you can see there's a curve to it, and when there's a curve to it, what you want to do is try and roll your old metal across there and make sure that you have enough width. You can see it's just like barely. By the time I roll that, it's going to be the full amount of metal that I'm using there pretty well. I'm going to go around the perimeter because it gets kind of gets a burr on it from the snips, and that'll kind of affect how we want to bend it. So we gotta get this all flat first. There we have a flat surface now, so we can bend and stretch it how we desire. So check out these cool new Miller texting gloves, guys. So the first thing I guess we're gonna do is actually heat it up and roll that bend in it so that we can get it dimensioned roughly. Okay, now we're just going to do gentle taps because we don't want to beat the panel up and make it look really rough. I'm tapping over this seam, and that kind of gives me that roll action. It gives me some give under the panel, and just holding the edge up a little bit. Okay, so you can see we got this curvature fitting pretty nicely here. It'll probably need a little fine tuning as we go. I have a bit more curved than is needed because I have another curve right here. You can see how that curves up there. So I've gone ahead and marked that line by holding this on there, and kind of where it starts to curve away, you can see that first bend there, and then the second one running up there. And so I've made a corresponding triangle shape there, and that's just a place to aim for with my hammer. So I'm going to heat it up and then try and form it that way without deforming this area too much. And I really want to just heat up only this localized area so that I can get the metal to stretch, because this is like a reverse curve to what we got going on already. So going to be a little challenging. See, I'm just using the edge of the bench there to support it, and that way it won't affect my bend down here. So this panel does have to go up here, but first I have to kind of make this bend, and then I can fold that panel back. So I think I got enough of a dip in there now that I can do that actually. So what we'll do is we'll just come over to the edge of the bench, and there's still like a curve here that's running up here, and we don't want to take this curve away, so we're going to heat this area really good again with the torch. That'll relax all this metal and let it go where we want it to. So you can see we still have our bend here. I may have to sharpen it up a little bit, but we'll have to wait till we do the final trim to see exactly where the convex of that bend is. As far as this goes though, you can see we have the line is dipping in the right place there and dipping in the right place there. And you can see we have the right shape down here. It's just that we still got... So I'm just going to bend this on here. This is actually where my trunk drop's going to weld in. Right there, so... So I'm still working on this piece. It's a bit of a skill tester, no doubt, but I am getting it. I want it to do as much of it as I could without slicing into it, but you know, I was hammering and hammering and hammering, and I just wasn't getting enough stretch out of it. So I made these slits in it and then bend it where I want it and then weld it. And the bonus to that is I can hammer down my welds and stretch them out. You can see how wide that seam is, and that was right tight before I welded it, and then I hammered that weld down on the anvil here when it was still red hot and spread it out, and that added a bunch of metal to that area. Because here that is after it's all welded and fit it, and it's fitting really nicely now. I just got to get those welds ground down, and then so here you can see I've got that piece all ground off nicely, and it's all fitted to the car, fitted to the trunk drop panel there, and I'm just putting the edge on it there. I'm hammering that edge into there just like the original one has that lip along the edge there. So I'm trying to duplicate that as closely as possible. So I folded it all over. You can see I just have it folded over there, kind of around it fold, and then what I'm doing is sitting it flat on the anvil and kind of hitting it midway in the bend to put the opposite bend in it, because that's how the original one is. It's kind of not really a sharp bend, that first bend, but you know, that first bend there is what I'm talking about. I folded it there 90 degrees, and then I came in and I hit right here like on an angle on top the anvil here. I came in like that and hit it like that, and that's how I got that second bend in there. And then if I ran into a part after where it kind of took the first bend out, which happened in a few areas going around the corner and stuff, what I was able to do there is kind of hook it on the edge of the dolly and then hammer down on this lower part of it, and that would stretch that upper bend back into it. And so through that form of manipulation, I was able to get a really nice factory looking lip all the way along there. So there are some definitely some more advanced metalworking equipment that you could use to form this out, like with an English wheel you could stretch these bends in here no problem, or even a pummeling hammer, or shrinker stretcher machine would be very handy for this, but you know, I don't have any of that, and I really don't have plans to get any of it. You know, I enjoy just keeping it simple. I do this as a hobby, and you know, you can always get bigger and better equipment, but then everything else kind of grows up in scale. All of a sudden I'll end up needing a bigger shop and things like that too. So you know, I just want to keep it simple. It's gratifying to build these parts and form them with my basic hand tools, and that's what it's all about for me. But certainly if you were you know, looking to do this for a living, you could look into more advanced ways of working this metal, but with my basic tools, this is the best ways that I've found. Well, I've got this little rubber shield goes right here, and so we are making the holes for it, but they are not just simply holes, or at least on the original panel it has this raised little area for the hole to be there, so that this sits more flat on there. And so we're trying to duplicate that just for the sake of originality. So what I'm going to do to accomplish that is a hole saw, sort of cut in on an angle so that it only catches half, and then we can lift it up, make it level to the panel, and then just add a strip of metal around the front edge. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do that right now. See right there, that's what I'm aiming for. That's all the way through there. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. There we go. So you can see it's fitting, but it's a little tight. So what I'll do is I'll just take my little burr and I'll run that hole that way a bit and that hole that way a bit, because they're not quite up to size anyways. And that'll make it perfect. It'll be dead center there then and dead center there. So what I'm going to do is just weld up that gap there. I can fill that with weld. And I'll adjust the backside with the burr so it's nice and rounded and it looks like it's stamped into there. Okay, now I could use a little sliver of metal to fill that, but the thing is, that's not a straight shot. Like if you look, it's got quite an angle to it, so I can kind of build up the weld on an angle. It's a little harder to get a little sliver of metal sitting in there just right on an angle. So I'm just doing it this way. I'm just building up the weld. So see, I'm just going to make a ring of spots around there to start with, and then, you know, let it cool a little bit, work on this one, and then I'll come back and make a ring of spots down from the edge. And there's the finished result of that welding there. So it's not the prettiest thing, but that's what grinders are for, right? No, it's joking, but of course, it's not structural, it's just cosmetic. So we're going to take this grinding wheel here now and just work a general shape, and then of course we'll blend it in with the flapper disc after and smooth it all out really pretty. There. Whenever you've done a lot of heavy grinding like this, what you want to do is go around with a sharp pick or the corner of a screwdriver or something and stab everywhere where you've welded it really firmly, and just see if any of the seams have like a thin spot in them. You'll be able to tell right away. So that's what I had right there. I had a thin spot right in the corner there, and I found it and fixed it. This piece is 100% done now. Here it is next to the original, so you can see how those bumps turned out there. I'm pretty happy with them. And then on the back side, I just got in there with the burr and carved them out so that it would look factory. And there I just put the coat of rust paint on there. I'm just putting this on everything as I go here to protect it in the time that I'm taking to put it together, and then when I'm all done I'm gonna be going over everything with the final color for this vehicle. Here, this is the tail pan patches there. The silver streak pencil wasn't showing up all that good, so I just went over it a bit with Sharpie, both for your benefit and mine. So I'm going to get this all cut out. So here I'm working with the 20 gauge now. This is for the tail pan section, which is just 20 gauge. This is the corner here that's going to meet the new outer skin, and then this is the part that frame rail that I made actually spot welds into. So not sure if you can see those lines on there, but just quickly finish cutting these out here. And so we're trying to duplicate this piece. Excuse my gloves, I'm poor and my gloves are truly worn out, but I'll get new ones soon. So we're duplicating this internal piece right here. You can see it's rusted right through there. So I'm going to be probably starting with this long bend here, and I'm going to be working on my little anvil here. We have to put this bend line in. This bend line in here. So what we're going to do is slice away a pie-shaped piece of metal right out of there, and then bend this over, and then we'll weld that up from the back side, and we'll have that perfect shape. And we have a bunch of excess because we still got to fold that lip there after. Okay, so now we're just going to hammer this bend line in. So here as the part takes shape, I'm able to you know, trim off the excess, but I'm still leaving some excess at this point. So here's that corner piece all welded up. I just gotta grind it. I know it looks a little ugly, they often do. I weld to avoid warpage and get a nice finished product, not to make a beautiful weld, because I'm gonna grind it off anyway. So and this tab on the boggin, if you're wondering, I ended up having to move it around a bit, and it ended up getting completely broken off, so I just welded it back on, no big deal. And when that's all ground, you won't be able to tell. Okay, so I'll be grinding these welds with this 60 grit flap disc on my router 2.0 here. So there's that little corner piece all done, and I put a quick coat of paint on it there to protect it until I get it installed. But I do actually plan on installing it in the car tomorrow, so I taped off the edges to save myself a little time cleaning them up again, and I'll get that put in. And then there's that section of tail pan that goes adjacent to it. I've already got that roughed out as well, so I'm going to start putting stuff in the car when I get here tomorrow. So exciting stuff ahead. Well, I'm finally welding stuff to the car. I'm going to have to excuse that weld is a little ugly there. here that is all ground up. You can see it turned out pretty nice. It doesn't quite match perfectly the profile in the corner, but otherwise everything matched up really good. And I dressed up the back side just the same. Really helps out with the sealing it up to prevent rust if you can get the back all smooth as well. I've got this patch all completely in, and I've got this one made and all fitted and everything, but I'm not too happy with, like, I just wasn't feeling that good when I put this in, and I got it a little bit crooked. I don't know if you can see that, but this kind of sweeps back a bit. It's only out by about 1/8 of an inch. But how I'm going to correct that is by cutting out this triangular piece, because I also noticed that this rust here is a little bit worse than I thought. I should have come up and got that rust when I was taking care of this piece. So I am going to do that now, and then when I have that piece cut out, I can simply just you know, tweak that and make it straight. I don't know how I did that, because it was so simple to just take a straight edge and go down there and see, but you know, you can see I'm off a little bit. So I will fix it though. I am somewhat OCD about these things. I don't want a bunch of body filler, you know, making up for my mistake. It's gonna get fixed in metal work here. And just like that, that little problem is fixed. You can see now that it's bang on straight. Okay, so you can see I'm making some progress here. I've got this patch all fitted in here, and I've just tacked it in a few locations. You definitely want to spread your tacks out when you're just fitting a piece in. You don't want to like start welding on an edge and work your way along, because it will warp all over the place on you. So you want to like get the, you know, all the corners and in between, and just keep closing up the area. You also want to have air gun handy to keep the area cool. And you want to keep manipulating the seam so that it's lining up perfectly, because if you're out even by the thickness of the metal, you will never be able to dress that down to a seamless repair when you're done. So I'm just gonna continue on here. It's not something where you can just, you know, go nuts at it. You have to really think about it, and you know, just move around a lot. Watch your heat, and pay attention to what you're doing. So I cool it after every spot, and I'm just going to be running along here with the dolly too, and now, a lot of people will tell you need a gap when you're welding up a butt weld like this to avoid warpage, but I'm here to tell you that if you control your heat properly, if you have you know, a short duration weld, as in really keeping your heat cranked up high and doing just a quick spot, you don't need to have that gap. In fact, you're much better off to not have that gap, because people who weld with a gap weld on a lower heat setting, and generally what happens is they get a lot of pinholes in their welds because they don't have full penetration through, because if they turned it up high enough to get full penetration, they'd be burning back the metal. So I like to have a really tight seam if I can. You know, sometimes I get a little gap like that. I'm perfectly capable of filling it, but the less weld you have on there, the better when you go to grind it, and the easier it will be to conceal the seam. Sometimes I'm very thankful that I'm ambidextrous. I think it really helps me a lot with doing work like this. I'm just going to be doing the spot welds here. I know my clamps are a little goofy, but they're getting the job done. My heat setting's probably a touch high. I should walk over and turn it down, but I'm not going to, so we'll see how it goes. Beautiful. We'll just make sure to I always like to just tap them down one more time before I weld them, and that way everything is sitting nice and flush. You get a lot stronger joint when it's really nice and tight versus having a little bit of an air gap in there. There you can see how that's taking shape there. Okay, so I've just been spotting in between every spot, filling it in, and you can see I'm down to about 1/4 inch between spots now. So you're going to be getting to the point where you're now connecting the spots together, you know, doing a couple spots between each spot, you know, to get them all joined up. What you want to do before you do that is brush off all this, you know, carbon or whatever you want to call it, the impurities that build up on there. Brush it off, otherwise you'll end up with, you know, a dirty weld with pinholes in it. It only really takes a second, makes a big difference. I've got this panel all welded in now, so I just wire brushed off the weld, and I'm just gonna grind it here in a minute. One other thing I just want to point out is you can see I've got my whole, you know, hub assembly, everything, the struts, everything's covered up so that I'm not getting sparks on them. Even my jack, I went and wrapped a bag around it so that it doesn't get all that grinding grit down around the hydraulics on it. Okay, so for areas like this, I like to use this 3-inch grinding wheel on my router tool here. I use it on the lowest speed setting, and I still move around a lot because you can actually cause a lot of warpage just by grinding, especially if you're just using like a standard high-speed angle grinder like that. You're going to cause a lot of heat, you know, when you get that bluing around where you're grinding. That's warping it when you get that much heat on sheet metal like this. So you want to avoid that, and you also want to wear a dust mask and hearing protection, of course. So I'm going to do that. I'm about halfway done grinding this now, and I just wanted to show you another little tip here. Like when you're grinding, the idea is to grind only on the weld. Don't grind beside the weld at all. You can see that I haven't touched the metal hardly anywhere beside the weld. Like, see right there, I nicked it a little. You want to avoid that because any of those gouges are going to show later. Those are now below the surface essentially, and the only way to get rid of them is to grind them out, which would make the metal too thin. So you really want to avoid getting them. I know this is probably hard to see with the way the light reflects off it, but you get the idea. That is how I achieve that seamless look when I'm done, is by, you know, grinding this down very carefully without touching this. And when I get this totally flush, that's when I'll go over it with like a flapper disc. But in the meantime, I actually like to use these thin grinding wheels on my router at a low speed, and what I'm able to do is just stay right on the weld with them. So here's how it looks just before I hit it with the flopper wheel. I know this is all reflecting really bad and it's hard to really see what's going on here, but doing my best to capture this for you. So you can see I've got it like, you know, 90-95% there. And you can just barely see the edges of the weld. So now I'm going to go along with the flopper wheel, 60 grit flopper wheel, and blend that all in. One other thing, if I didn't mention, you should be running 023 or 025 wire on your MIG welder to do work like this. Don't be running like, you know, 030 or 35 wire. That'll just leave a huge mess of metal on there. So make sure you've got the right wire. It helps a lot. So you want to press pretty hard on it when you're doing this so that you'll flex the flap disc, and then it will get into all the areas and blend it together. So there you go, that's after the flap wheel. Very hard to tell where the seam is now. And this whole process has only taken me about 20 minutes. That's not bad for a patch this size. I know it's really hard to see, but later on I'll be painting it and then it'll be a lot easier to see. So there you can see that turned out really nice on the inside too. I was able to dress all the welds for a near seamless repair inside and out. Okay, well, we're just getting down to the final details here, and I've already gone to the other side and taken this template of where the corner goes, because as you can see, this one, there isn't much left of the corner to use as a guide. It's rusted right off, so no biggie. Got our template, and I've made it so it lines up to right there, and then I've already, as you can see, I've got a nice match there already. So a little tricky here because there is a body line here, but that's the nice thing about these templates here, is they do fold. Okay. So that's really looking like it. I'm just going to cut on the inside of that line there, and it should be perfect. Get the big Makita out here. Now We can just confirm that our template fits nicely now that we got an actual cut. That's kind of how the other side is too. That sticks out a little there. I think that's how it should be. Maybe that should be shaved a little. Okay, now we're just going to run down the edge with the fiber wheel there to take any burrs off. So right now I'm just going around with this little micro burr on my drill and kind of just fine tuning some stuff. Like there's a few little bumps here, and this is a little more controlled than the big burr on the router. I can just take a whisker off here and there and make little corrections. Also great for deburring everything. Two coats of paint on there. And here's the back side. I climbed right under the car so I could get you a good close-up view. So there is still some fitting to do as I go in here, but just tacking it in and seeing how close that is, and that's pretty close because I've still got to bend that edge over. I need a better spot on there that's never going to hold. See if I can work here. It's tight though. So when you're doing this kind of work, it's always good to think 2 steps ahead. So that's what I'm doing here, just fitting my trunk drop in, and I'm pretty happy to say the least. It literally sits in there on its own. There's nothing holding it right now, just the pressure of it fitting between the 2 panels. So you can see it's not perfect in the wheelhouse here. There was a little rust on there. It's tough. This car is very rusty, and there's some areas where I just have to accept it and leave a little rust. I do wish that I had come all the way to here and replaced this whole corner. That would have probably helped, but you know, it is what it is. I gotta stop somewhere. There's, you know, enough really bad rust that I'm gonna have to just, you know, call it good with some of this scale. So unfortunately my shop has one annoying feature. The water backs up into it every spring, and that's why I'm so diligent about plowing around it. But regardless, it's happened again here, and I know for a fact that this water's not going away anytime soon. So I'm gonna move out of this workspace and up into my raised bay there. I'll be working on my mom's PT Cruiser in there, so I'll be off to 240 for a bit. Unfortunately, I didn't completely get this corner back together like I would have liked, but the car is just going to sit here until I do. So thanks for watching Matt's Garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see the conclusion of this project when I get back to it.